Number 5 is Firehouse Subs, and an employee opens the steel steam cabinet behind the counter, and a burst of hot steam immediately fills the air because the meat is heated before it is placed on the bread. And that is one of the details that made Firehouse Subs well known. And while most sandwich chains built their business around Cold Cuts, Firehouse took a different approach with hot sandwiches and bold flavors and large portions big enough to feel like a full meal. And a lot of customers loved that. And Firehouse also became one of the few sandwich chains that consistently earned positive reviews for food quality, but their problem started somewhere else, which was behind the cash register. Rent costs went up, and labor costs went up, and food costs went up, and each location required more space than most competitors, and more equipment, and more money just to stay open each day. And the pressure started building on franchise owners, and then the cracks began to show. And in Minneapolis, a major Firehouse Subs operator filed for bankruptcy with more than $1 million in debt, and multiple locations disappeared at the same time. Not because the sandwiches stopped tasting good, and not because customers walked away, but because the business math no longer worked the way it once did. What makes the story different is that most customers do not notice the problem right away because someone still orders the same sandwich, and still pays at the same counter, and still sees the fire true CK murals on the walls, and then they come back a few months later, and the restaurant is gone with no major controversy, and no boycott campaign, and no scandal. And the location is simply no longer there, and Firehouse Subs still has loyal customers, and it still serves hot sandwiches that many people genuinely enjoy. But more and more locations are disappearing, even while the product itself continues to earn strong reviews. Number 4 is Moe's Southwest Grill. And for years, the first thing customers heard when they walked through the door was, "Welcome to Moe's," and there was no need to see the sign and no need to look at the menu, because all it took was hearing the entire crew shout in unison, and you instantly knew where you were. And it became one of the most recognizable greetings in American fast food. And burritos and quesadillas and warm tortillas and loud music, and a dining room that always felt full of energy made Moe's grow rapidly. And at one point, the chain operated more than 700 locations across the country. But those familiar shouts of "welcome to Moe's" are being heard less and less, not because employees stopped saying it, but because more and more restaurants are no longer there, and sales fell by nearly 18%, which was one of the sharpest declines in the brand's recent history. And many franchise operators began leaving the system, and some closed their doors, and some walked away from investments they had spent years building. And in some places, the disappearance happened on an even larger scale. Because in Illinois, the entire Moe's system vanished with not a single location remaining open in the state. For many former customers, that reality did not show up in a financial report, but showed up when they returned to a familiar shopping center and found that the burrito counter was gone, and the sign "Hush" been removed, and the music was gone, and the familiar greeting from behind the counter had disappeared. And meanwhile, Focus Brands began directing more resources toward other brands within its portfolio, like Cinnabon and Auntie Anne's, while Moe's continued to shrink. And many locations began showing signs of age with store designs that had not changed in years, and experiences that became increasingly inconsistent from one location to another. And some restaurants stayed busy, while others were nearly empty. Then, another story started to emerge, because Moe's was put up for sale, a brand that once occupied hundreds of shopping centers across the country, and a name that once appeared along nearly every major retail area. But the sale failed to bring in the level of interest many expected, and fewer new locations are opening under the Moe's name. And today there are still Moe's restaurants in business, and there are still hot burritos coming off the line, and there are still employees shouting "Welcome to Moe's." But compared to its peak years, that greeting is echoing in far fewer places than it once did. Number 3 is Church's Chicken, and the game is about to start on TV, and a box of Church's Chicken is set down in the middle of the table, and the lid is lifted, and steam is still rising from inside, and the honey butter biscuit disappears first, and then the last pieces of chicken. And scenes like that used to play out all across working-class neighborhoods throughout the country. And Church's built its reputation on filling meals at prices many families could afford. And for years that was enough, but in recent years, Church's Chicken has been shrinking in a way very few people noticed, with no Headline-grabbing bankruptcy and no nationwide news story. Just one restaurant closing, and then another, and then another. Many locations still feel like they belong to an earlier time, with the same familiar menu boards and the same aging dining rooms and restaurants that have barely changed, while everything around them keeps changing. And at the same time, customers change too, because more meals are being ordered through phones and more orders are flowing through apps. And churches entered that phase much later than many of its competitors. And as poultry costs increased, the pressure continued building on franchise owners. And some locations began disappearing from neighborhoods that were once the brand's strongest markets. Raising Cane's kept opening new restaurants, and new fried chicken chains continued entering the market, while churches kept getting smaller. And the most concerning part may be the memory gap, because more and more younger customers have never stepped inside a Church's restaurant and have never ordered a Church's chicken box. And Church's chicken is still around, and the honey butter biscuits are still being made every day, and the familiar orange boxes still appear behind the counter. But in many places, Church's is becoming a brand, remembered more by people who used to eat there than by people walking through the doors today. Number 2 is Papa Murphy's, and a pizza is placed on the kitchen counter with the cheese still cold and the dough still raw in the oven, still off, because dinner has not started yet. And for years that was a familiar scene for Papa Murphy's customers, who stopped by the store and took the pizza home and placed it on a tray and preheated the oven and waited for it to reach temperate and put the pizza in and then waited again. And at one time that model worked very well, because for many larger families, it was an affordable way to put a big pizza on the table for a weekend dinner. Then everything changed because the workday ends, and a phone comes out and a few taps on DoorDash or Uber Eats or Grubhub. Later, a hot pizza is already on its way to the front door. And meanwhile, the Papa Murphy's pizza is still sitting on the kitchen counter, and the oven still needs to be turned on, and the time still needs to be invested. And those steps never changed, but the customer did. And sales began to fall, and more stores closed, and rent pressure continued to grow, and more than 14% of the system struggled with operating costs and lease expenses, and in Mississippi and Kentucky, the Papa Murphy's name has nearly disappeared altogether. What is strange is that the product itself has not changed much, because it is still the same pizza, and still the same recipe, and still the same promise of a pizza baked at home. But the thing that once made Papa Murphy's different is now what makes it inconvenient. And the pizza gets carried home, and the oven gets turned on, and the timer starts counting down. And more people decide they do not want to do the rest of the work themselves. Number 1 is Red Robin, and the server sets the check down on the table, and a father picks it up and looks at it and then looks again. 3 burgers and 3 soft drinks, and 1 appetizer and sales tax, and the tip coming to more than $60 total. And the bottomless fries basket has been empty for a while, and the chairs around the table start sliding back, and dinner is over, but the number on that check is still sitting there, and for years. Red Robin was the place for moments like that, birthdays and after the kids' ball games and weekends and gatherings that were not too formal but were not rushed either, with a big burger and bottomless fries, and a place comfortable enough to sit and stay a little longer. Today, those meals are becoming much more expensive, with not just the burgers but everything, including drinks and labor and operating costs and tips, making the final bill keep getting bigger, and that is where Red Robin finds itself in the toughest position possible, because if you want something quick, the drive-thru is right down the road, and if you want a special night out, there are plenty of restaurants on the other end of the range, and Red Robin sits in the middle of those two worlds, not fast enough to be fast food, and not special enough to be a major occasion. For many families, the math is starting to change, and the question becomes one night at Red Robin or groceries for several meals at home. And those questions are coming up more and more often, and the losses continue and more locations close, and some restaurants that used to be packed no longer feel as busy as they once did. And what puts Red Robin at number 1 is not that it is the weakest brand on this list, but that it is trapped in the hardest place to survive, which is the middle. And when people start thinking carefully about every dollar they spend, the middle is often the first thing to get cut, and a check is placed on the table. A glance lasts a few seconds longer than usual, and sometimes that is all it takes to change a family's routine. After all 12 names on today's list, There is one thing that stands out, which is that most of these brands are not struggling because they make bad food, since many still serve good meals, and many still have loyal customers, and many still have people who grew up with them. But that is not enough anymore, and in a time when everything changes faster than it used to, a brand can do a lot of things right and still find itself in trouble. And maybe that is the bigger story behind today's list. Not which chain will close next, but the fact that even names once considered too big to fail now have to prove their value every single day. And now, out of the 12 names on today's list, which one surprised you the most? And which one do you think still has the best chance to turn things around? Let us know down in the comments.